Well, welcome back to Tuts Plus. My name's Simon Plant, and today we're going to give you a couple of little tips to help you add finishing touches to your composited images. So today we're going to have a couple of little quick tips on adding finishing touches to composited images. Now these tips you wouldn't use all the time, and they're not always necessary, but I want to give you a couple of samples of where that you can just add that extra layer of realism to the picture. Now, as you're probably aware, when you get light bouncing off objects, sometimes if the objects are brightly coloured, let's say you've got a person stood near a blue wall, and the light's hitting the wall, that subject can sometimes pick up some of that colour from the environment, i.e. the blue. So it's something it's worth thinking about when you're doing these composited images, like this one for instance. You've got to think about the light, the direction of the light, and how it interacts with the environment. So with this picture, it may be worth, for instance, adding a little bit of a cast to the legs of the horse, to add that extra little bit of realism to the picture. Now, I understand the irony here. We're talking about a picture of a centaur in front of us that I'm trying to add a bit more realism to, which is a bit silly, I know. But just take this as a sample image. So what we're going to do is going to make a selection, and we're going to add a little bit of a color cast to the legs of this horse, just to add that little bit of extra realism, as I said. Now, on some images, like this one, you probably don't need to worry about that so much, because he's not actually, the model here is not actually interacting directly with the grass, i.e. you can't see his legs. So you need to ask yourself, well, in this situation, and bearing in mind I know he's wearing a green shirt, how would the lights and the floodlights interact with him and the environment? And no doubt it would pick up a little bit of green, but in this image I chose not to add any colour cast. I didn't think it was needed. Also, when you're on the subject to the lighting, you got to also ask yourself, how does the light fall, and how would the light naturally fall off the image? Okay, how would it interact with the player here, and would it get darker the further it goes down? Right, now in this image again, it's a football pitch, or supposedly a football pitch, and you would have fairly even lighting. And I've taken a bit of artistic license with this particular image and made it a little bit moodier than perhaps it should be. So, you know, it's not all black or white. There is a bit of creative license involved. You do have to look at it image by image to work out whether any of these techniques I show you in any of these videos can apply to any individual image. So let's go back to our centaur picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly. Now, I'm presuming you've got a composite image and you've got a selection. You want to load the selection up like so. I've got the selection here. So we've got a nice selection around him. Go to your layers panel, and you want to add a new empty layer above there. Now, if you want to, you can hide the selection. Go to Command and Control H to hide it. Command and Control H would also turn it back on. Now, that's important because many a time I've gone to work on an image and couldn't understand why my tools weren't working, and it's because I've hidden the selection. So always remember to turn it back on. Command and Control H to hide. I'm going to get a paintbrush tool, and holding down the Alt or Option key, I'm going to sample some of the green from the scene here, somewhere around that, and then we can zoom in. And again, it's artistic license. You've got to sort of try and work out what would pick up a green cast here. So I'm going to get my Wacom pen and small paintbrush, and I'm going to start to paint where I think the colour cast will get reflected. Now, I think the bottom of the spear here, it would pick up, and my computer's struggling a little bit, so I'm going to paint in there. Most definitely the bottom of the centaur's legs would pick up a bit of green colour cast, the hoof of the horse as well. How far you go up again is a matter of preference. It will probably pick up quite a bit of colour cast on the white parts there. So I'm just going to bring it up the legs around here like so, maybe as far up to some of the underbelly of the horse. So I think it definitely would get reflected in there, and maybe the backside of the leg here up there. Once you've finished doing that, you can then turn Command and Control H to turn the selection back on, and then we can just deselect that. Command and Control D to deselect. And then go back to the layers, we can change the blending mode of this from normal to colour. And you can see that's the difference. If I switch it on and off, you can see it's gone quite desaturated. Now, obviously, we want to back off the opacity on that a little bit. Maybe somewhere around there. So you can see it's not made a massive difference, but it has affected the image somewhat. And obviously, it's a matter of playing around with the controls there, the opacity controls, to see how much of the effect you want to bring in. Once you've refined where you want the colour, we can obviously add a layer mask to this, and then you can further refine. So maybe you've got something that's a little bit too strong in some parts, maybe maybe on the leg here. We can make sure we've got a paintbrush with black, and we can just drop it back from certain areas a little bit. So obviously the effect may well be stronger further down the legs than it maybe would be further up. Again, it's a bit of artistic license. But it's just, like I said, it's just those fine details. I often get asked, because some people know that I spend hours and hours on some of these images. So I think the last one I did for a client took me 72 hours of retouching, which is a huge amount. And people say, well, why do you go into so much detail? Because I know that in most, maybe 90% of the people who look at the images are never going to see the details, because maybe it's because it's on the web, or they're not just purely not going to look that closely. But to me, it's the other 10%, the other 10 of people, maybe of other photographers, other retouchers, who will look closely. And I want to know that the image I've done put as much detail into the image as possible, like the little fine hairs here, and then there's obviously the details right in the background here, which got their own little shadows and are all modelled to match the lighting. So that's sort of details I like to go into, and it's not for obviously all the audience to look at, because a lot of them probably will never notice them, but I notice them, and I want to make sure things look as realistic as possible, even when we're talking about silly like mythological images like this centaur. So these finishing details can sometimes make or break an image to some people, so it is quite important. The other tip I've got for this video, which some people use, and I use it now and again, if we're dealing with full-length composites like this image, sometimes you want to maybe draw people's attention away from certain areas for whatever reason, and maybe help add a little bit of weight to the picture. Let me show you what I mean. So with this picture, it might be that I want to kind of darken the lower half. Now, whenever we lighten or darken an image or parts of an image, we're actually enabling the viewer to be directed to certain images, certain parts of the image, I should say. So, for instance, if somewhere's a lot lighter than another, the viewer's eye is going to go to the lighter part as opposed to the darker part. So it's a good way of kind of directing the viewer's eye through the picture, and we can use this to our advantage. So let's say that we've got this image, and I don't really want people looking right down towards the bottom of the image. I want to keep the attention further up and away from, say, the legs. So what we can do, very simple, we add our selection again that we had before of our centaur, and that creates a selection. Now we're going to go down here now and add a curves adjustment layer. And because we've got our selection already added there, we've already got a nice mask made. And I'm simply going to pull this down to darken our centaur. Somewhere around there looks quite good. So if I Alt or Option click on the mask, you can see the mask there. And now we've got a darker centaur. Now we don't want to darken the whole of the centaur. So what I'm going to do with a paintbrush or with a selection tool, we can just go in and we can make a selection around, somewhere around there, fill that with black, and that takes the effect away. Remember, white reveals, black conceals. And we can then go back, Alt or Option click again on the layer mask to bring that back, and we now see we've got darker legs, obviously with a line through. So what we can do, Alt or Option click again if you want to, so you can view this. Go to Filter, Blur, and add a Gaussian blur, and we're just going to soften the transition, not that much, just drop that down somewhere a bit more manageable, and just going to soften the transition between the light and dark there, so there's not a big line going through it. Click OK, and Alt or Option click on the mask again, and that just softens that transition up. Still a little bit harsh, so what we'll do, we'll go in with a paintbrush. I'll bring my layers out so we can see them, because that's a bit of a pain. I'm disappearing. We're going to paint with black, so make sure your black is selected, and we're going to just go in and we're going to gradually, remember I'm using a pressure sensitive tablet and pen, and we just gradually just paint away where we don't want it, or likewise we can paint with white to bring a bit more in. And actually that's made quite a significant difference to the picture. Here's before, here's after. I think that again adds that little bit more realism to the picture, as well as sort of distracting our viewer's eye away from that area. It adds a bit more weight to the centaur. Again, help fusing him with the surroundings. There's before, there's after. We can change the blending mode. If you're picking up any colour saturation we don't want, we can change the blend mode to luminosity, and that will only affect the brightness, not the colour. Having said that, that looks like it's got picked up more colour, so we'll move that. That sometimes happens for some reason. It never seemed to happen before, but when you change the blend mode to luminosity, normally it would take the colour out of the picture. But I've noticed more recently it has the opposite effect, and whether that's a bug in Photoshop or something's changed, I don't know. So in this case, it's picked up more colour in luminosity mode, so I'm going to change it back to normal, like so. Don't know why that is, but it's something I've noticed. So there's before, there's after. So again, another little tip that helps add weight and detract your viewers' attention away from that area if you don't want them going there. So that concludes this very quick video. I hope these couple of tips will be of use to you. They're not going to be usable on every image you create, but certainly with these types of full-length images, they can be a real big help and add some nice finishing touches to your images. Until next time, thanks for watching. Cheers.